There's no easy MSL role.
That's a great and honest answer. I appreciate that.
Hello, and welcome to Biofilm Podcast, a weekly show that brings you to the forefront of biomedical research, biotech, pharma, and healthcare fields, and the professionals behind it. I'm your host, Pavel Ryzhov. My guest on this episode is Dr. Martijn Bijker, a founder of From Science To Pharma, an online platform for training scientists, pharma and medical professionals to prepare for their transition into a Medical Science Liaison role. We will be discussing his academic journey in the immuno-oncology field, transition into an MSL role, and rise along the medical affairs vertical, as well as his entrepreneurial venture, and how he sees the MSL role evolve in a post-COVID-19 world. Welcome to the podcast, Martijn.
Good to have me today.
I'd like to start every podcast by asking my guests about some of the movies that they had a chance to watch recently. And I know you have been very busy, but one of the things I watched recently was a Groundhog Day, which seems very fitting given the fact that every day seems to be about the same in this pandemic. Have you had a chance to watch something recently that you can share with us?
I watched Jumanji, the last one. I think is the next level. I saw one in a movie and saw it recently again on the TV, which was really good. I really like The Rock. It's kind of one of my favorites. So that was a good movie. Have you seen it?
I have not had a chance to see that, but I am a big fan of Rock, and I think I should really give it a try. I heard all the good things about both of these movies with him, and I think as a Rock fan, I should give it a go, for sure.
You should.
Do you like The Rock as just the movie star, or there's something about him that you also can relate to, like as on a professional level by any chance?
No, just as a movie star.
I would say, like, to me, like his work ethic, waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning, hitting the gym and going, all out, being the hardest worker in the room is something I can naturally gravitate towards. But I guess he's not quite like a scientist for sure. So maybe it's a little bit of a far role model to have.
He does. You have to work hard for things, and that's what I've been taught by my parents. If you want something, you have to work hard for it. And yeah, that's what I'm still doing. I work every day hard, and there's no excuses.
Yeah, absolutely. So working hard is something that people in the scientific community are accustomed to doing in our training, like in a PhD. So when we first got acquainted in summer 2018, when I first joined your program online, I had a chance to learn a lot about not only the MSL career track, but obviously the drug development life cycle and everything that has to do with the industry, like pharmaceutical industry, and what goes into that. So I felt super honored and really educated about this very strange world to me already at the PhD level. When you were a PhD student, what kind of training have you had that helped you maybe to transition into MSL role? And what was your mindset at the time? Like, how did your research influence the sort of the journey that you set yourself on?
I wasn't ready for an MSL role then. And that's all I must say. I did my PhD, then I did a postdoc for, I think, 3 years. And then I transitioned into an MSL role. So I did remember during my PhD, I had a career day where we were looking for what other things you like to do, maybe outside research. And because I wasn't sure about research. I mean, I loved research, but I wasn't sure about academic research. And I remember this woman telling me, but Martijn, why are you kind of not sure if you should stay in academic research? Because every time you talk about research, you're so excited and passionate, you can tell and explain things so well. Maybe this was already a sign that I should go into an MSL role. But at that time, I thought, okay, maybe I should stick to the science bit and do a postdoc. So I never knew about the MSL role until I was late in my postdoc. So I wasn't prepared for it during my MSL, during my PhD role. And also a lot of people are not prepared for it because it's such a different industry. It's the one thing you learn during your PhD and postdoc is learning about research, science, quickly upskilling yourself in a certain therapeutic area. But that's about it. There's a lot of things you need to learn more about the MSL role of the pharmaceutical industry in order to kind of be prepared for your next step.
Do you feel like you had a stigma of transitioning into an industry when you were doing your PhD? Because this is something that I think is still a bit prevalent in today's academic career track, like where you, like as a PhD student, you're not necessarily encouraged to think outside of the box, if you will.
No, I mean, everybody in academic research think there's only one path, and that's going up, and that's become a professor. But you might have 1,000 PhD students, 100 postdocs, maybe 500 postdocs, a few group leaders, and there might be one professor. So there's not enough spaces or jobs to become a professor, and that's how it becomes like a funnel. It's impossible. But no one really teaches you during your PhD or postdoc that there are other options out there. And actually, it's looked down upon, frowned upon if you leave. And a lot of people think you're a failure if you leave, and that's kind of ingrained in the scientists. Only real science or academic research is pure. And you shouldn't leave. And once you leave, or if you do leave, then you kind of didn't make it. You didn't get your grant money or your fellowship, or you didn't publish. So that's kind of often the knowledge or the notion what people have about people who leave.
Would you say that what was the thing that brought you to the life sciences in the first place? I mean, for a lot of us, it's fascination with some corner of biology that we're like. For myself, I'm a protein structural biologist. Like, I was really fascinated about protein structures. What drew you to the immuno-oncology field in the first place?
Actually, was one of my professors. So I studied chemistry, so hardcore chemistry. So going into immunology, immuno-oncology was not something that was taught really during the chemistry classes. So I did a bit of a side tour. So I wanted to do biochemistry, molecular biology, and one of the subjects we had was human physiology, and there was immunology involved in there, and that really caught my attention, and that kind of sparked my interest to explore immunology. So I had to go to different faculties, see if they have something there. I went to different universities to see if they have more immuno-oncology training there, and that's how I got to that aspect. And what I really enjoyed about immunology is how the immune system can reject cancer, so how T cells can search and find things and kill it, and that got me into immuno-oncology. So from chemistry, biochemistry to immunology, immuno-oncology was kind of almost a linear track, but it wasn't something that was provided to me during the chemistry lessons. It was something that I picked up during one of the classes and followed and followed my interest and passion. It wasn't an easy one because it wasn't like laid out for me. I had to kind of pursue it and get people to convince that this is what I wanted, and to convince that I could do this as a chemistry student. But yeah, it paid off. I really.
Do you feel you have an advantage of maybe jumping into immuno-oncology field at the earlier stage of your career versus for, say, people now with so many advances in the immuno-oncology field, particularly like in 2020, how much harder it is to learn more, all the scope of immuno-oncology field?
Yeah, because I started in 2000, where people knew it was possible, but they hadn't shown it in real life. I mean, some anecdotal experiences worked, and you had stem cell transplantation, which is kind of like an immune response against the leukemia. But other than that, it wasn't a big thing, and so it helps you to understand where the field came from. People jumping now, they're 20 years behind, and it's a lot to learn in a short space of time. So I think it helps. Yes.
Yeah. So when you were going through your studies in Netherlands, what kind of things you were going through your mind in terms of where do you want to take yourself in terms of you settled on an MSL role, but how did you go about finding a position ultimately that would lead you to move to Australia and not for example United States?
Oh, that's interesting. I actually did a master traineeship in the United States. That was during my master's. It was 9 months in San Diego at the La Jolla Institute for Technology.
Oh, that's fascinating.
I wanted to stay there. My now wife, then girlfriend, was there as well. She didn't like to stay there. So I said, okay, good, honey, we go home to the Netherlands. I do my PhD there, but after my PhD, we go overseas again. That was the deal. So Netherlands is officially 4 years, but most people will take 5 years. And then after 3.5, 4 years, I said, okay, we have to get ready again for our next trip overseas. So that's, but she didn't like it. But I said, what about the US? She said, no, don't want to do it. And I said, what about she said, what about Canada? I said, it's too cold or French speaking, and my French is not good enough. She said, what about England? Because it's across the channel. It's really easy. I said, it's too wet. So New Zealand was left as an English speaking country, and we had Australia, and actually was in Auckland, New Zealand. So I checked out Auckland, New Zealand. I checked out Melbourne, which is in Australia, for a postdoc position, and none of the things fell through. But at the conference in New Zealand, Auckland, I saw 2 speakers from Sydney, and last minute I booked a ticket to Sydney, and that's where I ended up. And actually, when I landed here in Sydney, it really felt like I've been here before. It feels like I'm home again. Funny feeling. Never had been in Australia before. But when I landed I didn't have this feeling when I was in Melbourne. I did have this feeling when I landed in Sydney. I felt like, yeah, I've been here before. It feels good, feels natural. So it was actually at the bottom of the list, to be honest.
Wow.
It was actually the best decision, I think. It's the best decision I've ever made. I've been here for 12 years.
That's fascinating. I don't think I've ever had experience like that where I would come to a place and I would be like, that's home. And that's as you say, you've never been there. I think once you have that feeling in yourself, that definitely you have to go with that gut feeling, 100%.
So I was at a conference to find a postdoc position in Australia and New Zealand at that time. Was 2006, and a year later, 2007, we actually moved to Australia, and it felt really like, okay, I'm going home. That's how it felt when I was packing our bags and moved.
Yeah. So what was the experience securing that first MSL role for you? I think it was with AbbVie, right? So what was that experience like?
So first, I went to Australia as a postdoc. I was 3.5 years a postdoc.
Yeah.
And getting into an MSL role was challenging. I mean, I heard from it by a colleague of my wife's husband. I knew it wasn't easy to get into. I talked to someone at the Garvan Institute who left, and then to the place where I did my postdoc, and she kind of got to explain to me what the MSL role was about. She got me in contact with the recruiter she used, and then I just quickly upskilled. It took me a long time, but fast forward upskilled myself on all the things I need to know about the MSL role, pharma, clinical trials, everything you can think about. But the challenge was, there was at least that time, 2010, there wasn't something you go online and say, okay, I want to go from A to Z, know everything about pharma, MSL role, medical affairs, and just feed me. It was just really going yourself, finding books about clinical trials, about the FDA, regulatory affairs, talking to people, and then I got in. I mean, actually, people told me, Martijn, you would probably be good as an MSL because you like talking to people, you like the science, you like explaining things, and And actually, looking back at it, when I was my PhD, when I wasn't sure about staying in academia, I then realized I like the science. I like explaining things of science, but I don't like to do the experiments as much anymore. That was for me that I should not stay in research and move to a different. So that's how I got to Abbott. I had 2 rounds of interviews, did quite well, and moved in. And I think they were impressed with my preparation, because that's a challenge. If you don't have experience, to go into a role especially an MSL role, it's a high level role. They want you to know a lot of things, and you have to come like almost 150, 200% prepared. And that's what we see now with our training. Most people are still really looking back, what have they achieved as a researcher, as a postdoc, as a PhD student, and all those things they put in their CV, they share in their interview. But it's no longer about that academic role. You are now moving into pharma, you're moving into an MSL role. It's all about that role. So your CV should show that you're ready for the next round of career steps. So if everything looks back at your postdoc, what you've done there, then if you look at that CV, I look at it and think, you're not ready, because your mindset is still in academic research as a postdoc and not the MSL role and pharmaceutical industry. So that was the hardest that I tried to change, and that's what we teach people.
Do you feel if you had to become an MSL in 2020, let's say, or like 2019 for the easier example, would it be harder to become an MSL in 2019 versus when you did?
Oh yeah, there's so much more competition. I think there was a few people that applied for the role that I had applied to. Now we hear people there, 3, 4, 5 rounds of interviews, several people they have per round. There might be 50, 60, 70 applications. It is full on. It's I would say I would still have gotten in nowadays, but I know what to do.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my question. Do you feel like you could have gotten that exact same position?
I would say yes.
That's very good. That's very good.
It's definitely it's a lot harder. So we have a team of people that coach people. So we have the online training platform where people learn about the MSL role. We also provide coaching that they kind of we help them to get ready for these interview rounds. And if you see and hear what kind of the interview rounds they get thrown at, it is full on. I've experienced a few tough rounds in the past, but I feel that they have so many more people to choose from, so they can raise the bar. In the past, it was like, oh, we got 5 people, okay, we pick the best, but now we got 50, okay, we can choose the real deal, the top person. It's more challenging, and therefore the process becomes harder and more strenuous.
Yeah. So in your first MSL role, I think you worked with Humira. And at that point in time, Humira was already an established drug. So what was that experience as MSL like in terms of going into contributing to the success of this established and now it's a best-selling drug on the market? What was your objective at the time?
So yes, it was established, but for me it was a launch. So not a launch. I was the first MSL in Abbott Australia for Humira gastroenterology. So it was relatively new when I started the role. I mean, but it was on the market for a short period of time, but it wasn't a real new role. It wasn't an old role. So it's the role was a long story. The role was new for this role for this drug in gastroenterology, but we had a medical manager. And the doctors had been using it for a while, so it wasn't new. My role was really try to prepare for the next inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis launch, and building a relationship with doctors and helping them to understand what are the challenges with the drug, safety profile, how can you manage side effects, and some ISSs we did some phase 4 studies with the drug and patients. So there's a lot of levels we worked on there at Humira in Crohn's disease.
Do you feel the working with I guess a pre-established drug was a sort of easier for you to sort of go into the MSL role and really learn versus if you had like a brand new drug that was just going through its clinical trials?
Good question. Because my second role was at Amgen, which was product, so inline products, so already on the market, and pipeline products, which I thought was more interesting because it's more exciting. You talk about the clinical trials, you see the clinical trials develop, start reading out. I don't know if the thing is it's more established because you have a medical advisor there, you have a medical team, you have a commercial team, you have the sales reps, the doctors are known, you know who is using what, because the sales rep, in my case, the sales rep had been working for a while in this space, so they knew all the doctors. When I started my next role in the pipeline phase, you don't know the doctors, so you have to kind of do your own key opinion leader profiling online, or you use an external company for doing that. You have no idea who has done clinical trials in this space unless you kind of find them, who have been in advisory board meetings. So it's really like it's starting from scratch, which is really interesting. So I think it's easier when you start on a approved product already, which is already in the market as an MSL in your first MSL role. But I think it's more exciting when you work in a pipeline space.
In your videos, you mentioned that there are different, to some degree, expectations from MSL roles depending on where you are in the life cycle of that drug. So, in your experience, what's the easiest and the hardest point in the life cycle of the drug to be an MSL for?
There's no easy MSL role.
That's a great and honest answer. I appreciate that.
And now, I mean, it's interesting. The MSL role can change so much, and I've had the luxury to being involved in first in human studies. So really, the drug was just tested in the first patients here in Australia, all the way up to end of life cycle management. So you had generic competition. So I covered all these stages in between, which is, I think, I was very fortunate with this. But every stage is different, and every drug is different. Every therapeutic area is different. I mean, depending on where you work, which disease, there's a lot of competition or a little bit of competition. There's aggressive competitors and not aggressive competitors. There's great data out there against you or not so great data against you. So it really depends on the country, the disease, the drug, the life cycle of it. Your product might be once a week a pill versus a every week injection. And interestingly, depending on the disease, sometimes people like injections more over pills, and some disease areas are like pills over injections. So, and I thought no one liked injections. They always like pills, but depending on the disease you are, they prefer one over the other. So, and it's just crazy. It's really hard to understand which one is harder. And in the end of the day, I think it really depends on the product, the life cycle, and the disease area you're working in.
That's fascinating. That seems that MSL role, and for each MSL, the journey would be completely different, because even for the same product, you might be covering completely different areas or disease indications or patients or key opinion leaders, right? It's very unique to individual circumstances.
Say your experience in general medicine, you work on a inline product, so the product's already on the market. Then you go to work in oncology, and it's a pipeline product. That's just a day-night difference. It's completely different. The doctors are different. It's oncology. It goes from inline to pipeline. And that's what we've seen, and myself as well experience going from one MSL role to another. You know the MSL role, but everything around it is different. And it's quite hard. And that's what you see when people when they want to hire people, say as an aspiring MSL, they want someone to have experience in that disease area, because at least then you know the disease area inside out and all the other things you can learn. Mm-hmm. And once you're an expert, they're happy for you to not have that therapeutic area knowledge, because you know all the other stuff and you can learn about the disease area. So that's kind of how pharma often approach that. They want to take a little bit of risk, not too much. So that's why they don't want you as an aspiring MSL to not know the therapeutic area. So you have to be an expert in that area. And you often hear MSL saying, "Oh, but I can do anything. I'm smart. Give me a few papers, and I get into that space really quickly." Mm-hmm. But we always stick to where you are. Maybe have a bit of a stretch therapeutic areas. Like I'm an immunologist, so I can vaccines, autoimmune diseases, inflammatory diseases, and it's also oncology. But you can stretch a few things, right? You don't have to do this just the one thing you've done as a scientist. But I shouldn't do cardiovascular because I know really nothing about cardiovascular disease. Mm-hmm. Which makes it a stretch to say I can do any MSL role, any therapeutic area, because it's too far-fetched.
Mm-hmm. So actually, this brings me to the next question, that you had a chance of working with different pharmaceutical companies over the years, and I was curious about learning what sort of prompted you to move from one to the next. Like, at which point you felt like, okay, I need to go, or was this something already like planned for you? Like, what was the determining factors on that journey to progressively more leadership roles and so on?
So interesting. So from AbbVie to Amgen, there was an opportunity to work in immuno-oncology. So that was my passion. I've done my master's, PhD, postdoc in that space. So that was relatively easy. It was closer to home. I just had a daughter then. So it was a bit of travel to the office every day when I was not traveling to the role at Abbott AbbVie. At Amgen, it was closer, but I was actually 5 minutes drive, which helped. It was immuno-oncology. It was cool. It was pipeline products, which was really great. So that was my biggest change to move there. Mm-hmm. At Amgen, had a great time as an MSL, learned a lot of things about, like I said, from phase 1 to generic competition. There was an opportunity to then, so I couldn't grow into a medical advisor role, which is in Australia the next level up, which is more strategic, less travel, more strategic, more in the office, working with the brand team or product launch team. So that was my next thing I wanted to do. But in Australia, Amgen, I think it was globally Amgen, you needed to be a medical doctor, medically qualified to become a medical advisor. One of the few companies have that rule. So I couldn't become a medical advisor. There was an opportunity to do a secondment in health economics, which I really wanted to do. I was in, Amgen had a collaboration with AstraZeneca, and that fell through. A clinical trial readout didn't go positive. But one of the two drugs that was going to be on health economics secondment was about that collaboration. So that fell through. So then actually I came up with a role, I'm not sure how that came up, maybe a recruiter, to go to Merck Sharona, which was more biomarker liaison manager, which I thought was great, something new. Biomarkers was up and coming. So I worked on that. Then I had some opportunities to work in marketing as well in Merck Sharona. Did some medical roles as well. It was a bit of I did 3 roles at the same time, I think, at the moment. And then I focused more on so I left Merck Sharona, focused more on my company, and then moved into a medical director role in Theramex at the moment.
Yeah. So the progressively leadership roles that you were getting over the years, what are the challenges in terms of at that level? What are the sort of key differences from just the field MSL work, besides obviously more responsibility? What are some of the unique challenges that you had to sort of adapt to that you hadn't had a chance to do as a field MSL?
As a field MSL, you are in the field. So you kind of don't have that strategic thinking and strategic interaction with the internal stakeholders. Often. And maybe that was different. Most MSLs are in the field, traveling, talking to the doctors, and if they're not traveling, they're at home because it's a field-based role. When I was doing especially my second role as an MSL at Amgen, I was next to the office. So when I was not traveling, I was in the office. So because we had so many drugs, quite a few drugs in hematology where I was working in oncology, that I could step up things that my medical advisor didn't have time to do. So I was a lot more involved in the strategic planning, strategic discussion, brand plan meetings, medical meetings. We had launch team meetings. So which already made you think more strategically. Mm-hmm. Most MSLs don't have that. So if you have that chance to be more involved in the strategic thinking, strategic meetings, that will really help you to the next level. Mm-hmm. So if you go up then to medical advisor, senior medical advisor, and even medical director, things become a lot more strategic, a lot more in the office, a lot less focusing on the doctors, which is kind of strange, right? Because you need to focus on those doctors because they are eventually going to prescribe your drug or not going to prescribe your drug or know about your drug. So it becomes more strategic. It also becomes more working with commercial because even though you're medical, you still work with commercial, regulatory, health economics. You have to understand more the commercial side of the business, the higher you go up in the company. Mm-hmm. And as an MSL, you don't have the exposure. You're just in the field with the doctors. You're very medical, you're very pure, clean. I shouldn't be promotional. I should be non-promotional, scientific based. Mm-hmm. That kind of, you still are as a medical person, but you need to know the commercial side of things a lot better mm-hmm. in order to be able to work with your commercial colleagues and bring a drug to the market, for instance. So the commercial thinking needs to come up the higher you go up in the chain. Mm-hmm. And I think, so I did my MBA in between all those roles. It really helps you if you do a more commercial training like an MBA to get that understanding, know how commercial talks, how things are done marketing wise, because you need the knowledge to kind of make sure you add value as a medical person to the commercial thinking. Because at the end of the day, pharmaceutical company is a commercial business. Mm-hmm. We have to do it ethically, but it's a commercial business. So understanding the commercial side of the business helps you as a medical affairs professional in growing your career.
Yeah. Have you had experience in your companies where the company would actually provide you some of that commercial training on the side to actually supplement your duties with that knowledge so you can actually be a better strategic thinker in that commercial space?
So a lot of companies provide support for MBA training. Mm-hmm. I think I had some support. Most of it I paid myself. Mm-hmm. Some companies are better. They provide everything. Mm-hmm. But there's always a clause, right? So they pay it, but then you have to stay, and if you leave early, you have to pay back something or everything. But that's then again a negotiation that you can have with your company. So how much you pay back, and what's the time frame of having it to pay back. But I think more companies realize that in order to be a really good medical affairs person, you're especially more medical advisor, senior medical advisor, you have to have the commercial understanding. And people with an MBA have that thinking often better. So you see, and I've seen the last few years, the last 4 or 5 years, a lot more people in medical affairs are doing an MBA. And I think the nice thing is then you have your scientific background, often PhD, or like PharmD, maybe MD, but there's a lot of PhDs there. You have your clinical understanding because you've been in MSL for many years and you've worked in pharmaceutical industry for a while. And then you also have your commercial understanding, I think, which makes you a really strong discussion partner internally, but also externally for the key opinion leaders.
Have you had a sort of idea of becoming more than just medical affairs person in terms of becoming, like, founding your own company other than from Science to Pharma, in terms of pharmaceutical company? Was that something that you dreamt of as a up-and-coming MSL at some point?
You mean to start my company?
Start a pharmaceutical company specifically.
You mean for me to start as a pharmaceutical company?
Yes.
I mean, I always liked starting things. I've always been, throughout my whole life, always liked to start things and be the first one in to start a project. The MSL, first MSL role was I started as the first MSL. Second role was I was the first MSL role at Merck. I had 2 jobs there, which I was the first at Theramex. I was the first to start it. So I kind of like it. I'm drawn to it. I wouldn't start a pharmaceutical company myself because I think that's too, not yet. Maybe in a few years' time as a CEO of a bio, but starting a pharmaceutical company is not easy. So that's too far. But I've always been busy trying to do things and setting things up. So I recently asked my dad, he said, I wasn't surprised when you started your own company because you've always been busy doing things. So it wasn't a surprise to me that you said, okay, I start this company. Yeah. And I didn't know how big it became because I just started as a one-on-one training and 3 people and 5 people, and now it's like thousands of people. So it grew over time. I never imagined that it became this big, but yeah, I like starting things.
Yeah, I was definitely about to segue into the from science to pharma. So what was the spark that ignited that fire for you? Like, okay, I have to start doing this.
My back surgery. I had back surgery in 2014. I had my disc was protruding into my nerves, and I had pain since I was 13. And I had a crazy basketball accident, which I think caused this. So I was at that time mid-30s, I think. I think it was my mid-30s, yes. I had surgery. I was out for 7 weeks, and my brain started to think about things. I was 1 year in my MBA. I was in my second PhD. In my second MSL role. I had been coaching people. I've done presentation at universities and research institutes about how to transition into the MSL role. And then I just thought, why don't I make a training out of this, a training company? And so I was in pain on the couch thinking about these things, writing things up, and thinking about how can I build something like this. And I just started. I just built a training. I did some marketing things. I learned things online about how to start a business. And from one thing led to another, and this slowly grew, and more challenges came across me to overcome, how to reach more people overseas. And yeah, it's just been a massive growth curve over the last 5-6 years. Yeah, 5-6 years.
That's amazing. And now I think there are other companies that are now following your footsteps, if I understand the timeline correctly. I think at the time that you started, there was basically no such kind of training available for people who wanted to transition. Is that correct?
It was online MSL training. There was some trainings face-to-face, but it was nothing online like we have. So we were the first to build an online MSL training platform that was global for everybody. And so far we've trained, I just recently checked, 126 countries, different countries. We've trained people in 126 different countries so far.
Wow. So what is the ultimate goal other than provide training for people? Like you have this online video selection, which is fantastic. And you also have this personal coaching and help with resumes. But what are some of the things that you are thinking about adding as an additional service? Or like, where do you see the growth of that company?
Yeah, so we've thought about it a lot lately. We've had a lot of discussions internally. We started at the Aspire, so it's like the product life cycle. We started as pre-launch, right, before the drug was launched. So we started in the pre-launch phase, which is people want to become an MSL. So the next thing is once people are MSL, what kind of training they need then. There's little training out there. So we've seen so many people that start an MSL role, have been an MSL for say a year, sometimes even 2 years, not knowing why they're doing things. They do things. They know they're smart. They know they have to talk to key opinion leaders. They know they have to kind of do certain things, support clinical trials, investigate initiated studies, and all these things. But they don't understand the strategic thinking behind why they're doing things. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to build trainings around that so that they know why they do things. It's almost like MSL excellence. So MSL onboarding, MSL excellence, that's training that people need and that's needed for MSLs, because as a company, you spend so much time and money to hire someone, and then you have someone, but then we often see that companies just don't do anything with them. They say, okay, you're smart, just go out in the field and talk to doctors, and just that's it. Mm-hmm. And we pay you money, but some other companies are much better. They say, okay, we want this from you, we want these things to come back to you, to the internal stakeholders, and there's a real structure on it. But we've seen a lot of companies just don't have that training. So the MSLs are often lost. They don't know why they're doing things. There's not a clear progression in learning. What are the things I need to learn to go to the next level, like in a senior MSL role or a medical advisor role? How can I become more strategic thinker? So those are the things we want to build in the next this year actually, and launch those. So next step, MSL training.
What new dimension do you think this experience of teaching other people added to your life? Do you feel that now this is something you want to maybe dive a lot deeper into, or you're fine with balancing your actual MSL and medical affairs career with this company? Like, where is the perfect balance for you?
Yeah, good one. I mean, I believe practice what you preach and preach what you practice. If you train people, but you go out of that industry and you haven't been in that industry for years, then it's hard to really get a good sense of what that life still is like. So being in the role on a day-to-day basis in medical affairs, working in medical affairs with doctors on a day-to-day basis, knowing what things are thrown at you, you know what to do with this, I think makes you a lot sharper. And that daily learning you can put in your training. So I believe doing both, and the online training and the actual job, makes me as a person a lot stronger. It makes the training a lot stronger because I know what's happening out there. I know when I say something to someone or coach someone or make a training, I know it's real life what's happening now. Mm-hmm. And that's why the strength of it. Where I want to go, I don't know. I mean, the company's growing, the team is growing. Not sure where we're going to go. Maybe, I wouldn't mind retiring in 5 or 10 years and then just do that. I don't know. So far, I enjoyed the training. I enjoy the company, the more commercial side, and I enjoy the medical affairs role I have now. So I think it's the best of both worlds so far.
That is great. I just read the article on marrying the two different careers in one person is something that you can always, leverage. And as you say, keeping the I don't know what's the expression, keeping your hand like on the pulse of the MSL world as you are doing, as actually giving the sort of the latest and greatest information and most accurate information to the training and sort of infusing that. And that's exactly how I think it should be done to be the most effective. So now that we are in this, go ahead.
So the higher you get in medical affairs, the more you're going to work with commercial and marketing, and the more marketing focused things become. But having then a company on the side which requires a lot of marketing things, it helps you to do your role as a medical affairs professional better, because you know a lot better how marketing thinks, what they do, why they do things, or why they shouldn't do things. And so you marry up the commercial side commercial learning on one side, and the coaching with the medical role, which you require to work efficiently with your commercial/marketing people in the pharmaceutical company. So I think it made me a lot better in just more all-rounder as a medical affairs professional.
I think also you have created this networking opportunity for thousands, now I would say tens of thousands of people. If your LinkedIn followers are to be looked at, you have a tremendous pull in the MSL industry because of this company, and that sort of puts you in this unique perspective of and position of bringing so many different people, aspiring MSLs together that might help each other ultimately, that sort of found that each other through this platform. Like, how does that make you feel in terms of not just providing the knowledge, but also providing these networking opportunities?
Yeah, great. I started this helping people even before I started the company. So I always liked helping people. I was involved in teaching at uni, even in high school. So I like training, coaching people. So that gives me a good feeling. And we talk a lot with people when they got the MSL job, and you hear about their transitional story, where they were. Some were in really bad places as researchers, postdocs, or pharmacists, and then you see them. They made it to the land of the MSL. They're loving the job. They say, "Wow, this is one that it's a great job. I love the job. 2, it's really well paid, and 3, probably most important, they value my contribution." Because same as me, as a postdoc, I wasn't felt valued at all. I never heard a single compliment in 3.5 years. Oh. So hearing those stories, those personal stories with people on the phone, and is really makes me feel good. I'm a sensitive person, so hearing the stories that you can make a difference in people's life and getting them a great new career, I think is great. So that's what I really enjoy. Coaching and talking to, and so having helped a lot of people, it makes me feel good. It's still business, but it also is nice that you can help people along the way.
That is fantastic. And I guess now you have a number of MSLs, again, thousands of MSLs that you have helped, who are now facing this crisis that we all do. And I think, as I was thinking about what kinds of questions I want to ask, as an MSL, you are now in a position to maybe give some advice for people who have now finding themselves to adapt to this new environment where MSLs are no longer necessarily able to do personal interactions with key opinion leaders, with physicians, with patient advocates, and so many other different people, which is one of the single most important things in their job. And I'm sure through a lot of different, people's heads are going through these questions. Am I job secure? Is MSL still a feasible track? What do you say to that?
I think the job is still secure. They need MSLs. Definitely, they need you in the job. But you have to be adaptable. I mean, I was in my role at Merck and also as a digital strategy manager. I've done a lot of digital stuff. So for me, digital comes naturally. Also, the whole online training course, everything is digital. So for me, it's a lot easier to switch. Not everybody is digitally savvy, but you have to be, just in a general in MSL or in business or in industry, you have to be able to adapt quickly. And some people are better able to do that. Some people are less able to do that. I think the people who are able to, it's like Darwin, survival of the fittest, or the survival of the adaptable person. Because you might be fit, but if you can't adapt, then you have a problem. So people who can adapt quickly, I think that's makes them stronger to stay in the role. Maybe, I can understand it if COVID is around for a lot longer and states are not open. So for instance, in the United States, in Australia, if you can't travel across states because the borders are closed, then there's a challenge. If you can overcome that with digital strategy, you can even do a simple phone call. Some of the doctors are not that really busy, so they're happy to do phone calls or digital meetings. But you have to think about other things. Can you do more advisory boards, get more insights into your strategy? Can you do more webinars? Can you have discussion groups in there, like little roundtable meetings per state, per hospital on disease areas? There's multiple things you can do, but you have to think about other things than just, I need to meet face to face. So in the past, it was always, you have to do face-to-face meetings because otherwise it didn't count towards your your score, because you have to, crazy in pharma, you still need to have a certain amount of visits per year per doctor to meet your med, which is not always the great thing to calculate. But then the phone call or emails didn't count in the past. But now you see, for instance, in CRM systems, that a digital call or phone call is considered to be an interaction with a doctor, and that counts towards the number of interactions you need to meet at the end of the year. So pharmaceutical companies are also more open to different kind of interaction, different kind of channels, discussing it with doctors. But it's a challenging environment. I mean, if it's so far, I haven't seen many MSLs being cut or at all. We've helped people getting MSL roles even during COVID. So people understand it's going to be maybe a few more months, but you get an MSL role now. You need to launch a product soon. You need an MSL role or MSL person for this role. So they're actually still hiring, maybe less than when there was not COVID around. But I haven't seen any people being sacked so far because of COVID. I've seen sales reps being cut because it's so much more, I think, selling and face-to-face selling. I haven't seen it happen in MSL role yet, but I don't see everything, but I haven't seen it yet happen.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was going to lead into next. Like from the sort of strategic big picture view, I've read news articles about various clinical trials being on hold or sort of modified or changed as a result of COVID-19, because you cannot necessarily do patient recruitment to the same level. And so this might have some kind of effect on the MSLs going forward. But do you think that still the MSL positions would be super prevalent going forward even more, or there will be some permanent changes to the way MSLs have to run business from now on?
I mean, I think you have to be adaptable. You have to change. That's for sure. You have to think differently digitally. You have to exploit things. I mean, simple things. If you just do a training for the sales reps, normally you do it face to face and you get them in and that's done. You can do that yourself as an MSL, record it, maybe as a webinar, and use that for new reps that come in later that need to be trained. So that saves time. It's digital. People can access it. So you need to think differently. Not everything has to be face to face. So that's one thing. The other thing, sorry, you were saying, what was your question again?
It was more about, I guess, what are some of the permanent changes that you feel MSLs would have to experience over time? Do you feel like field MSL would no longer be a field MSL anymore? It would be more like 80% just digital interactions with people going forward.
It will be definitely a hybrid role. It will be digital, would be online, will be face to face. Even sales reps, they always were always face to face. Everything has to change, and you have to be adaptable that you can do those things. But it's never going to go back to the old way it was. And actually, we've seen doctors. Some of the doctors say, "You know what? I actually like it that I know in my calendar there's a half an hour slot. We do a digital thing, and that's it. Then over. I can click the phone or the computer off, and that's it." So actually, doctors kind of are open for it. In the past, they were reluctant for it. You see, doctors are kind of like, "Yeah, I kind of like it." They're open for new things. So I think it will be a hybrid role from now on moving forward.
So in the end of my podcast, I sort of wanted to give you an opportunity to give a short sales pitch in terms of your platform that you have for aspiring MSLs, and where can the people find it?
Yeah, so they can find it at www.fromsciencetopharma.com. We run free webinars if you want to learn more about the MSL role, what it takes to be an MSL. I think it's an exciting career if you like your science and medical science, clinical science, and you like to be more talking about science rather than doing the experience. I think the MSL role is a perfect role for you to at least explore, and maybe it might be a great career. Depending on the country, you might need a terminal D degree, like a PhD or PharmD or an MD role. Certain countries, you don't have to have that terminal D degree, but I think definitely explore it. Attend a free webinar so to get more knowledge about the MSL role and if it's for you. And I would say it changed all the people we've trained. It have changed their lives. They said they wish they knew it years earlier. Same for me, and they wish they could have learned what the MSL role was earlier, so they can move into the role earlier and have a great career. So,
yeah, I would say I would also link the link to your website in the description below. And I would just wanted to say thank you so much, Martijn, for taking the time to speak with me today. It was a real pleasure and honor to have you today.
Likewise, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.